Welcome to Therapy Inspired. As therapists, we have a unique view of the world. We hold space for grief and trauma, yet we also witness resilience and healing, all while being humans ourselves. We hope to share helpful psychoeducational insights from our world as psychotherapists in and out of the therapy room. And while we'll be talking about things therapy related, listening and engaging in this podcast doesn't equate a client therapist relationship. And though we might be using insights from our work with various clinical issues, we don't reference specific cases. I'm Kameela Osman. I am a registered social worker and a psychotherapist. My practice is Elite Counseling and Consulting in Bowmanville, where I see in-person clients as well as clients virtually throughout Ontario.
My name is Darby Crosby, and I own the practice Crosby Counseling and Wellness, where I offer virtual sessions to anybody in Ontario for individuals, couples, families. I also do supervision for other clinicians who need some supervision. And today on Therapy Inspired, we are going to be talking about procrastination, motivation, and healthy habits, and how we can sort of create those healthy habits moving forward and overcome some of the blocks. Our daily habits create the routines and create how we can move forward in doing the things that we need to do throughout the day. So one of the blocks to healthy habits is procrastinating, not following through.
I know procrastination is something that I've worked really hard to overcome, and I still struggle with it at times. It can be really compulsive, where something as simple as returning a phone call or booking a follow-up doctor's appointment can be delayed for a month, especially if there isn't that pressure to do so. Even if you know it's in the best benefit or outcomes for yourself, sometimes you can procrastinate on the simplest of things.
Yeah, procrastination means that we're delaying or postponing tasks, often knowing that by doing so, there may be some negative consequences. It's funny when I often talk to parents, if their kids need a follow-up doctor's appointment, they're right on it. But if they need a follow-up doctor's appointment, oh no, I have too many things to do. I have to make lunch. I have to pack the bags. And so it is something that we just delay or postpone because we feel in the moment that something else is more important. We can, like in our previous episodes, we talked a little bit about fear of failure, fear of success, and fear of, like having to make too many decisions, decision-making fatigue, overwhelm. We talked about those things as being sort of things that can also interfere with us moving forward or taking that step. Generally speaking, procrastination is not about lack of discipline or perseverance or commitment. It's just that there's a lot of sort of emotional or sort of cognitive barriers to getting that one task done.
Yeah.
And so if we can identify the barriers, then it makes it easier for us to sort of overcome, that postponement.
Yeah. I will say an interesting fact I noticed, and this is anecdotally from doing therapy. And I mean, I also see myself as a bit of a recovering perfectionist, as I find that that does go hand in hand when we have high expectations of ourselves, when we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, that sometimes we can be more inclined to slip into deep and longer procrastination. Is that something you see too, Darby?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it is that mindset. It's like, I have to do this, but I'm a little bit hesitant. I'm a little bit scared to do it. What if, like all of those things, right? So, and if you do have a high pressure, right? Like I think we talked about last time, like if you want to build a website for your business, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be basic to begin with. And you can always go back and make it better as you go through. It doesn't always have to be perfect. So one of the things is fear of failure. So if we think that we want to do something and, we listen to people outside of us saying, oh, I don't know if that'll work. Are you sure you want to do that? Then sometimes it makes it difficult for us to get that motivation to move forward. So in terms of doing the things that we want to do, we sometimes have to break them up into smaller pieces and just do it step by step. Right. It also decreases the sort of overwhelm by task, right? A lot of the decluttering experts will say, don't declutter a room, declutter a corner of the room, because that makes it a little bit more manageable. So what we want to do is to be able to sort of really clearly define what we're going to do today, what we're going to do in this moment, and how much time we have to do that. And I think that's really important. Asking for help where we need it, you know, also just sort of calming ourselves down, saying it's okay, we can do this. So take a deep breath, relax, slow down your breathing. Remember to hydrate. You need to drink water, because if we don't, we can get headaches or we can feel a little bit more sluggish. We need to eat healthy foods, not a lot of candy and sugary processed foods. And believe it or not, even adults need somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. We need to get that rest, because in sleep, we can solve some problems. We can integrate things from the day, and we can feel more recharged and rested the next day.
So you're naming all these things that if we aren't mindful of these, it can add to overwhelm. It can
Right.
add to um, sort of influences for continued procrastination.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to be able to treat ourselves nicely enough so that we can be relaxed, so that we feel more comfortable to take that step forward, even if we have a little bit of fear going on,
Mhm.
right? Some other things that we can do is, cuddle with someone, or if you have a pet that you love to cuddle with, because pets are great, you can cuddle with them, you can cuddle, with your kids if you have kids, take a long bath, move your body, even just sort of meditate for 5 minutes if you have to, just to take a break. Um, and as we said, we don't need to be perfect about everything. And, in order to sort of do the tasks that we need to, especially if there is a lot of sort of fear or pressure on ourselves to perform something, chunking things down and focusing on a goal, making things a little bit easier in terms of step by steps, working for 5 minutes, taking 5 minutes off, whatever. Okay? We need to do those things to support ourselves.
Yeah. Those are some great things to be mindful of, Darby. I think the other piece that I hear a lot with procrastination and healthy habits overall is the idea of I just don't feel motivated. That idea of like I'm waiting to feel motivated can be a big block for a lot of
Mhm.
people and a block to maintaining healthy habits. So I feel motivated now. I've started those healthy habits and then it depletes or it plateaus, and suddenly I'm not motivated, so I'm not doing those things, completing those tasks, and I'm starting to feel that negative outcomes because I'm not doing things that are helpful for me. And so let's talk about motivation a little bit more for a moment. There's two ways of looking at motivation. There's intrinsic motivation that comes from within, and extrinsic motivation that is external. So that's the validation. We're expecting a reward, or we're going to get that A on that paper, we're going to get that promotion, and we're motivated by that. Or praise. We like it when people give us those compliments, and so we're motivated by that. The struggle with the extrinsic motivation, it's going to ebb and flow. It's not always going to be present. So I see a lot of people who again have perfectionism in their school life, and then they struggle in their work environment, or they have perfectionism and high self expectations because they're driven by that extrinsic motivation, even in their work life. And then when they hit parenthood or maintaining a home, they struggle because there is no validation. No one's going to give you a reward or praise for doing your dishes or doing your laundry or, taking care of your kids. There isn't that direct correlation of positive feedback, and then they can really struggle with that motivation. And so one of the things that I'm mindful of is to work at building intrinsic motivation and valuing that more than the extrinsic validation and motivation. And so one of the ways of reinforcing it is to really look at what's the why? What is the value of the task at hand? Even if it's something that feels like a chore, like vacuuming or doing the dishes or, making a lunch or a meal at home, there is a value to it. It's a bit of work and it may not feel pleasant, but the value is it connects to another goal for you. I'm making that meal at home because I know that I want to eat healthier, because I know that when I'm not eating home cooked meals, I feel more sluggish. I feel like I have a bit of a sugar crash, and I know it's impacting my cognition. And so when I connect that value and the benefits of the task to overarching goals, you're building that intrinsic motivation. It's the potential is always there, but our sight of it can be muddied by what are we looking at and how are we thinking about the task. Are we thinking of it like this is a chore and a have to, or are we recognizing it is in fact in our benefit? I'll give you the example from parenting, Darby.
Sure.
And I talk to a lot of parents about this, that in parenting, we can tell our kids, clean their room, or I can explain the benefits of cleaning their room, such as they're going to have better sleep and they're going to be able to find their stuff. And when they do clean their room, we can either praise them, but again, that praise, even that praise or that reward sticker, that's more of that intrinsic motivation. If I explain to them and positively reinforce the value connection, you did these things, and because you put your stuff away, and your room was clean, you were able to get ready in a timely way because you knew where all your stuff was. Now we have this extra time before we go off to school to play. There's going to be benefits when we do the things that, again, meet our goals and move us towards those goals.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, I think it's really important to understand the why of things, right?
Mhm.
Because otherwise it's just a chore. I'm doing it because mom says so, or whatever. And so we need to sort of figure that out.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes also, and I play this game with myself sometimes, is when there's a lot to do. I have to empty the dishwasher, something I don't really like doing. I mean, sometimes when I do it, I sort of say, hey, that's great. Oh, look, the dishwasher's empty and everything's put away neatly. So it's almost like I'm giving myself that reward and giving myself that sort of pick me up from the inside out kind of thing. And our habits, like we have a cue, a routine, and a reward as part of that loop and that routine. And what we need to be able to do is to be mindful of that and be mindful of the consistency of things. We can sort of work on habits to make them more sort of simple for us, straightforward, and to create ease of flow in order to do those things.
Mhm.
One of the things I heard, I listened to books rather than read books, from a book called 12 Traits. 12 Traits of the Greats. That's a tough one to say, by Dave Martin. He states that often, sometimes we'll even sort of procrastinate or have a hard time moving forward about things that we're passionate about because it has a specific meaning for us. And we're afraid that, this is so important to us that we're not going to be able to represent it properly. So again, we have to look at our brain and what we're saying to ourselves about things in order to be able to stay calm and grounded and move forward. So some of the things that we can do in terms of that self-care and that balance is to figure out how we can take care of ourselves. Is it exercise? Is it creating more balance in our routines with our family and work? Grounding exercises. Sometimes what I find helpful is writing out things like, what have I accomplished? What have I done? What things have I overcome? Sometimes even just looking at what I've done in the last week, because sometimes we lose track of all the things that we've done.
Mhm.
And especially if we don't get positive outcomes in all of those different lists, right? Write out 12 or 25 reasons why you're lovable and worthwhile and your life is good and all of that other positivity things. Because what we focus on is what we sort of bring into our life. And I think it's really important to focus on the accomplishments and the good things and the positivities and the things that we have in our life. Also, do things if there's a lot of stuff going on and you're not making a lot of headway, do something that gives you that sense of accomplishment. Like I said, empty the dishwasher, make a bed, do something that gives you a sense of beginning, middle, and completion. And I think it's really, really important that we applaud our efforts, just like we might with our friends or our family members or our kids. We need to sort of appreciate and acknowledge that we've put forth a lot of effort and we deserve that appreciation too.
Sometimes
Well,
even just creating a to-do list and doing that check mark can make that difference. Or, the other thing I think of is to just coming back to motivation for a second, instead of waiting for that sense of motivation, to do what's called behavioral activation, where you do what you know would be helpful, and you can negotiate with yourself. I'm going to do this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and see how I feel. And then once you get that sense of feeling good, you're going to feel like completing the task, or, staying. I think of that example of not feeling like socializing, which a lot of people have struggled with post-pandemic. If you don't feel like socializing or going to the gym, go for that walk for 10 minutes and see if you feel like continuing it around the block. Go and say, I'm going to stay for 15 minutes at, this event. And if I'm enjoying myself, I'm gonna stay. Chances are once you're there, you've shifted that habit already. You've initiated.
Absolutely. So we have to work with ourselves and be gentle with ourselves as we work through these challenges. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us today on today's episode of Therapy Inspired, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. Take care.